Oh, Game Boy Color, with your massively overlooked library with classics such as The Grinch, Shantae, and many others. You were one of the greatest handhelds of all time, but not enough people gave you a look, even though Kirby Tilt and Tumble was probably one of the best games ever made for a handheld device. Of course, you had some junk as well. You had some junk licensed games. But hey, you know what form of media didn't have shitty licensed games? Pinball. Yeah, no, seriously, pinball. Pinball's best games were often licensed. Creature of the Black Lagoon, Addams Family, Twilight Zone. What else are you gonna mention? Oh yeah, there's plenty of others to mention, like Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's a great one. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The limits were endless when it came to pinball licensed material, because they often came into their own. Pinball was a simple game that you couldn't really screw up. You could have lame tables, but I've never really played a terrible pinball machine in my entire life. All of them give me some form of enjoyment. But why am I talking about pinball? You see, back in 2001, or around that time period, Microsoft decided to release tables under the license of Gottlieb, and the choices were very questionable. Gottlieb had many tables that were very popular. Central Park. You had the Mario Brothers pinball table, though that probably wasn't included due to licensing. You had Black Hole, you had Victory, you had Genie, you had so many great tables. And what did they pick? Baffle Ball, Slick Chick, Knockout. What the hell is the deal with these tables? It's absolutely ridiculous. But you know what? They played pretty decently, in fact. They were some of the best simulations at the time. Sure, they were static images. Sure, the animation was very minimal. Sure, the ball didn't really roll like a ball, but they managed to recreate so many features of the actual pinball table. The sound was accurate, the physics actually weren't half bad, and you know what? They replicated some pretty cool features of these old tables, as I've already said. The haunted house here, for example, managed to recreate the entire basement area, similar to what Black Hole had. And you know what? Besides having to set additional flipper buttons, it really wasn't all too bad and played nicely, though the nudging mechanics were pretty shitty at the time. But I used to play this game a lot as a child. My parents had it installed on their computer. And besides Space Cadet Pinball, this is pretty much all I would play, mainly for Haunted House, which I actually learned to love in real life as well. Flash forward to 2001, which was the same year, Microsoft decided to replicate Pinball Arcade on the Game Boy Color. Except they omitted two of the better tables. They decided to omit Cue Ball Wizard and Humpty Dumpty. Cue Ball Wizard I can understand. It's a very complex table that probably wouldn't work even if they tried. But why Humpty Dumpty? That was probably the only reason you'd be buying this thing, to test out the first pinball machine that wasn't a game of luck. Well, Microsoft actually had a history of releasing games for the Game Boy Color. Yeah, I'm not kidding. It's crazy. Yeah, in 2001, they released a recreation of their entertainment pack, which included tons of games that most people had already probably played, even though most people probably only got this from Minesweeper on the Game Boy, which admittedly was a nice idea, even though I'm absolutely terrible at Minesweeper. Okay, but how did the Pinball Arcade turn out? Surely they had great experience, right? Well, there is a huge difference between these two games. First of all, the menu is nothing close to what the Microsoft Entertainment Pack had. The Microsoft Entertainment Pack had a Windows-inspired UI that looked very nice. And you know what? The games weren't all bad. I will say for once that this was actually a pretty good collection of games. Why? Because the majority of the games were simple. They weren't pinball. They weren't super fast-paced. They weren't required to be. They were just fun, standard video games that could easily be fit anywhere else, and basic card games like Solitaire. Honestly, this pack worked out really well. It was a simple thing that you bought for $5 to shut your kid up, or if you were an adult, you bought it to entertain yourself when standing in the elevator or something. But how the hell did the Pinball Arcade turn out? Ugh, my goodness, what the hell is this? Okay, let's actually give this a fair shot. So what do you start with? Well, you start with a game called Baffle Ball. This was a pre-Humpty Dumpty pinball table. What I mean by that is, It came out before pinball had any sort of flippers. Well, how did that turn out? Pretty shitty. Because the fact of the matter is, this means this game is a game of luck. Very unusual. And honestly, this one's pretty lame. I would stay away from it. I should also notice that when mentioned that when you start a game, it creates this title card for you to watch. Really weird. Anywho, this is a recreation of Knockout, the actual pinball table, which I played in real life. It's not even really that fun in real life, but at least the action is brisk, and even on the Windows version of the Microsoft Pinball Arcade it turned out well. So how does it turn out here? The short answer, dreadful. The long answer, well, let's give it some credit. I will admit that the artwork looks very nice. In fact, the artwork is probably the nicest part about it. They recreated it quite well in an 8-bit style. What's wrong with it? It plays like absolute ass. You see, the physics don't allow you to do what you can do in an actual pinball table. And I know it's the Game Boy Color and I shouldn't set my expectations that high, but the fact of the matter is, you have to have brisk pinball action. I have no doubt in my mind that they could have made this a brisk playing pinball table if they tried. Not to mention, the ball just sticks to things, it's really unusual. You can't even hit it if it's right in front of your flipper sometimes. Ugh, don't go near this table. Slick Chick. This is a very interesting title that I've played in person, and it's actually quite a lot of fun once you get used to it. So, how does it play here? Well, this one isn't looking as hot as Knockout did. Honestly, I think this is the worst looking of the bunch, and it plays like shit as well. It suffers from the same problems, and the wide flipper placement doesn't really help it either. Honestly, this is another example of why Microsoft Entertainment Pack works so well. The fact is, those were basic card games. Pinball is a fast-action game that doesn't work on the Game Boy Color. Not even Pokemon Pinball really pulled it off. Ugh, next table. Spirit of 76. This table was released in 1976 to commemorate the bicentennial anniversary of the United States. And it was made in both solid state, and it was also made in electromechanical variants. And you know what? This recreation of the game is very, very, very nice. This plays fairly well. Even though you'll have some problems, it seems like the physics are more cooperative in this table than the other tables. It just feels really smooth. Now, does it move as fast as I'd like it to? No, it wouldn't. But you know what? I can actually make shots that I want to make in this one, even though you still get that sticky flipper situation sometimes. But you know what? This isn't too bad. You can actually have some fun playing this, mainly due to the fact that they simplified the artwork. Notice how it doesn't look as detailed as the others, but it still comes across as clean, and they managed to make the pace faster. Yes, one worth playing, but still completely unremarkable. Haunted House. One of the absolute best tables I've ever played. But you know what? It's not just one of the best tables I've ever played, it's one of the best times I've ever had doing anything in my life. I love the theme of this table. And you know what? When you first start this one, it seems like it's going to be okay. It replicates the music nicely, and you know what? You see that lower playfield, and it seems like it's going to turn out okay. This table suffers from sticky flippers like no tomorrow. The sticky flippers are absolutely ridiculous. You can't hit shit, even if you try. Not to mention the gap is a lot wider than it should be. This is not a 2-to-1 replication of the arcade game. Not at all. In fact, it turned out so terrible that you can barely hit shit. Also, why does it allow me to do 5 balls on a 3-ball game? This is just insane. Ugh. Not even worth it. Final thoughts. Well, while the sound presentation was decent and the visual replications of the tables weren't half bad, I will have to say that the gameplay elements make this one lag pretty heavily. Most pinball titles on the Game Boy Color, and even the original Game Boy, turned out like absolute garbage. Honestly, you shouldn't waste your time. I'll give this game a 4 out of 10. I'll give it its merits where its merits are due, but it's just not worth playing. Unless you're a diehard pinball fan, or a diehard Game Boy Color fan.